Hello. Okay, let's see video. All righty. That should bring me right there.
Okay.
Thomas.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm going to ask you to all mute your microphones.
Okay.
While we wait.
Who's Jan? I don't know Jan. This is sort of cool. I can see all the names. This is great.
All right. 5:56.
Well, Diane Dante. Well, hello there. Great. This is great. I love this.
You can't see me, can you?
I cannot see you. I can see your name though. So this is cool. So I'm seeing people as I enter, I take it. Is that how this works? Let's see. Okay.
We have 7 participants so far.
I'm waiting for the main guy. I mean, not that you all aren't main people. You're all totally main people. But
our main guest has not joined us yet.
Well, it is early. See, you're used to coming from early family now, Manny. See, after 36 years, I've turned a Mexican into being on time sometimes. Imagine. Well, Thomas is new. He's never heard me say this. Thomas, I come from a family that was on time was like next to godliness, okay? And being late was the opposite. Like, it was as bad as being a liar or a cheater. People we know on, where. Anyway, so.
You're dead in the water as a musician if you don't show up on time.
Yeah, exactly. Very good.
Simple.
You have to
look at, wow, Diane, nice background.
Thank you.
So, man, I'm not able to share my screen.
Okay, let me do the sharing for all.
We all should be able to share our screens.
Multiple participants can now share the screen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So it's we have now Ray and Rhonda Crow are joining us.
Oh, great. That's great. All right.
All right.
Hi, guys. Good to see you.
Ray and
Good to
Rhonda.
almost see you. Good to see your name up there. And I know Steve was going to come. I mean, he was logging in earlier.
Mary is joining us.
Great. So just out of curiosity, since we haven't started yet, why do some names have like the complete name and, okay, like Mary, and some like, how does it know? Is it by your email name? Is that how it chooses the name to call you on the screen?
It's by what you typed in.
Okay.
In the Zoom app.
Okay, gotcha. Well, hello all. I'm still waiting for our guest.
John Sunlow is coming. Admitting John Sunlow.
Well, and to be hello, John. And to be perfectly honest, if we were at the library where we've always held our meetings, I would wait a few minutes. So I hope you guys don't mind if I wait a few minutes to begin. It looks like people are not having trouble logging in, which is good. That was one of my concerns that I don't have to be concerned about anymore.
Okay. Patricia is joining us, and as is Vote Solar.
And there's Vote Solar.
Whom I suppose is
I'm hoping that's Nathan.
Nathan.
I'm sure it is.
Well, it hasn't asked. I'm seeing theirs, but it's not showing me as connected.
Is that Nathan?
It sound like either Raymond or Sheldon.
Oh, that sounded like Raymond. Ray?
I'm here.
Okay.
I see my name here, but not my face, so I'm not sure
Right.
why.
And same with our guest speaker here, Vote Solar. I see he's trying to get in here. So I am certainly not the one I am not the tech person.
All right.
I would say, Manny, you're able to,
There's Nathan.
There I
There
go.
he is.
That's me. It's Ray.
Hello.
No, there he is, Vote Solar.
Okay. So let me please ask all of you to mute your microphones for a moment while I explain a little bit of the Zoom etiquette that we're going to use in this meeting. There is an agenda, which I will share in a moment. In this agenda, our main guest tonight, Nathan Phelps from Vote Solar, will take over the reins of this discussion and tell us why we are in danger. Ross obviously will give an introduction previously. And after that, we're going to have a Q&A session. At that point, I will have to manage who raises their hand to ask a question and who doesn't. If you do not know how to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, Ken will share his screen to show you how to raise the hand in the Zoom application. Ken, would you please do that now?
They're talking, I think.
hang on a second. I'm going to share a different screen here.
Ken, it's just at participants now at the bottom, isn't it?
The bottom of the participant screen.
Raise hand. It just go to participants at the bottom and there's,
Do you want me to do this or do you want to?
oh no, that's fine. I mean, I just think you can tell people. Go ahead, sure, sorry.
I've got two screens, so I've got things.
Gotcha,
on other
sure.
screens. When you share your application, it changes your screen, so it doesn't quite look the same.
Right.
But normally, there's a chat box. I can bring this down. So since I'm sharing my screen, see, I get a little different. But typically on the bottom of your display or somewhere on your display, you're going to have these functions: to mute, to stop video, to look at the participants. If I click this participant thing, it brings up the windows of people. You can also, in the chat, where's the chat?
It's also at the bottom.
It's also at the bottom, right next to
When you share your display, it's different.
Okay.
But typically, you'll have a chat box in here. And if I type in, hi, everyone, and it goes to everyone, of course, my keyboard needs to be woken up. Hi, everyone. Everybody should see that in their chat box. And if you wanted to send it to a particular person, you could send just a chat to a particular person too. Okay, so raising your hand, for me, it's in the participant box here. You see this little thing that says raise hand. So if I click that, what would happen is you see this little icon in my screen with the hand going up. See over here? So that would give an indication to the
Well, Ken, I didn't see it. Did you raise your hand? Did you actually do it?
Are you seeing my picture?
I see your picture, so raise your hand so I can see if I can see it.
You should see a little hand icon.
I don't see it though.
I do see, I do, right now,
It's right there.
I see Ken's hand is up, as is Raymond Crow's, as is Heather Myers.
Well, I can't see them, so someone will have to
I
tell
am
me.
the one controlling that, honey.
Okay, that's fine. That's
So
fine.
I will just call the people who have their hand up
Perfect.
So,
at the time of the questions and answers.
Perfect.
Click your raise hand. You see your raise hand button? Click it.
Uh-huh. Yes, I did.
Did you?
Okay, now Ross Gordon has a raised hand. I can see that.
My point is
So,
Karen, that I can't see. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it. You have to look at it on the participant screen.
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was came on their picture. Okay, got it. All right, Manny, why don't you do it anyway? I have enough to do, so you can call on the people. Okay.
Right.
That's
So
fine.
I'm gonna stop sharing, Manny. You can take
Okay,
it.
let's
Yeah,
stop sharing your screen.
Okay, so I'm ready to start because we're trying to condense
Okay,
our.
let me comment on the raised hand. After you talk, you need to put your hand down. Or else it'll be
Exactly,
raised.
and unmute your microphone as well. Everybody keep their microphones muted until after they have raised their hand, I will unmute them. They can talk and lower their hand like Diane said. Thank you, Diane.
Okay, so we're trying to condense these meetings. So I am going to start by saying welcome to everybody. Welcome to our first Zoom general meeting. The last one was a Zoom Facebook combination virtual town hall with the mayor. So we're moving along in the Zoom world. The wonderful thing about Zoom is going to be represented by my first guest, my first and only guest this evening, Nathan Phelps. It's wonderful to have an expert in the field. Nathan is the regulatory director for Vote Solar. Nathan focuses, you ready folks, on regulatory design for distributed generation, including net metering and rate design. Prior to joining Vote Solar, Nathan was a senior economist at the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities, where he worked renewable energy and distributed generation regulation. Nathan went to Willamette University for undergraduate studies in environmental science and politics before attending Tufts for graduate studies in environmental policy. So not only does he have all these wonderful credentials, but he is also co-author of the brief that some of you probably read that ignited this flame, this fire among us. So we are so happy to have someone that really understands this situation tell us about it. So Nathan, I'm going to say I might add, Nathan, I want to tell you, I've read other papers like this and I stopped halfway through. Your paper was written in a language that I really could understand. And I want to thank you for that. Really, it's ridiculous that oftentimes that's not the case. So without further ado, Nathan Phelps from Vote Solar.
Thanks, Roz, and thanks for the kind words on the issue brief. It was very intentional. We wanted to try to make it short so people didn't get lost and bored along the way, but also in relatively common terms. It's very easy to get bogged down in this regulatory sphere in acronyms or technical terms that most people just don't understand. So we tried really hard to make sure that we didn't do that. So thank you. So I'm happy to talk as long as anyone wants, but I also want to save a lot of time for Q&A to make sure that I'm able to address any questions that you may have. But let's start a little bit at the beginning here. And before I dive into the filing, I just want to talk about NERA a little bit. So NERA is the New England Ratepayers Association. There's not a whole lot known about NERA because they don't release their members, so we don't know who their members are. We don't really know anything about their motivations for the filing. I have opposed them in New Hampshire. They were in a net metering docket in New Hampshire, and they were proposing essentially to eliminate net metering. And their arguments were not very sophisticated. So I'm inclined to believe that there are external factors that are motivating them to do stuff, and it's not strictly an internal motivation. But beyond that, we don't actually know who's driving the ship on this. So starting, over 2 months ago now, NERA actually filed this petition, April 14th to be exact. And the next day, FERC set a comment deadline of 30 days to respond. That has since been extended, but it was a little surprising how quickly FERC acted upon the petition. And the petition essentially asks FERC to assert jurisdiction over any electricity that's exported to the grid. So it's pretty clear that when you generate electricity and then you use that electricity on site, that is state authority. That's pretty clear, and that's not disputed in the petition. What the petition does assert is that anytime the customer generates more electricity than they're using instantaneously, that should be FERC jurisdiction. So FERC would take the power essentially away from the state and reside it in the federal government. That's the argument. I do not agree with this argument. I think it's very much wrong, and it's also inconsistent with history. Set that aside for a minute, and I'll come back to that. The petition goes on to make some essentially disparaging arguments of net metering. The petition essentially says that it's a subsidy, that people are not paying their fair share, and this one personally really gets me, that essentially solar is for rich people and poor people are hurt as a result of net metering. I find that particularly offensive myself. Beyond that, there's not much beyond the petition. That's the basic argument that is laid out in the petition. And the petition's 100 pages long, but there's actually very little substance beyond what I just laid out. Now, as far as the history of net metering, it actually starts almost 40 years ago. So when the Public Utility Regulatory Policy Act, or PURPA, was passed in the late 70s, the states started to implement it. They had to implement it. They had to implement this federal law. And some states, specifically Massachusetts and Arizona, decided that they were essentially going to establish net metering. They were going to allow people to run their meter backwards and therefore be able to offset their usage in the future with their exports to the grid. And that was the genesis for net metering. Since then, a lot of states have passed net metering in statute and also through regulatory processes. And 20 years ago, a utility in Iowa, Mid-American, filed a petition with FERC. And essentially, that petition argues a lot of the same things that are in the current NERA petition. And at that time, FERC said, this is not our issue. This is the state's issue. We view net metering as a retail program. And as a retail program, it's in the jurisdiction of the states. That retail versus wholesale distinction is really important. It goes back to the Federal Power Act, which is about 80 years old at this point in time. And the Federal Power Act separated that jurisdiction between state and federal. So the states had exclusive jurisdiction over retail policies, and the federal government had jurisdiction over wholesale policies. Now, I'm trying to stay away from using some terms that are a little wonky, if you will. But one of the terms that's important in regard to the Federal Power Act is, and PURPA, is this idea of wholesale being when somebody generates electricity, sells it to somebody else, and that person is going to sell it to somebody else, or a sale for resale. The reason that's important is that's the underlying argument of the NEAR petition is that anytime you export to the grid, essentially it's a sale for resale. Once again, I do not agree with that. It's really, it's a metering technique in order to net out your usage over the course of a month, which is a retail policy. So in 2001, FERC made that decision, the Mid-American decision. Since then, many states have relied on that decision to actually implement net metering. So it is pretty well-established case law. And there's a foundation, FERC has defended it over the years. And then now we have this petition from NERA, and it's important to note that nothing's changed. So this petition is a little untimely. And what I mean by that is normally for a petition like this, which is essentially the same petition from 20 years ago, you would need something to have changed in order to make the filing appropriate. And nothing's changed. So there's a question about whether or not this filing should even be entertained at all. And then beyond that, there's the actual argument of the merits of the petition. And there's a lot of people that are coming out against the petition, which is really important, which is a segue to the next issue, which is what's our response? What can we do to fight this? So Vote Solar has been working with other organizations to basically come up with a three-prong approach to fighting this petition. First, it's outreach to your state officials. We want to make sure that the states are involved, that they intervene in this docket, and that they oppose the docket. We want to make sure that the states have a very strong voice here because we fundamentally believe that they will play a very important role in defending net metering. It's really, this petition is asking the federal government to take some of the power away from the states. So the states should be defending their jurisdiction and then also their customers that are already net metering. Across the United States, we have over 2.2 million households that are net metering. And all of those customers are at risk of losing a lot of the value, a lot of the benefit that they receive from their net metering system. On top of that, we have about 100,000 commercial and industrial customers that also are net metering. So all of these customers could be really hurt by this petition. So that's one of the reasons we want the states to really be involved, to protect their ability to basically legislate and regulate, and then also protect their customers. The second prong is we created a website. It's called savesolar.org, and I believe that's been circulated to all of you. And that website tries to give a voice to individuals, make sure that all of you have an opportunity to voice your opposition to the petition. That takes the form of letters. Specifically, what we're doing is we're having those letters sent to the governor, and then we will have all of those letters sent over to FERC. We want to make sure that individuals have an opportunity to participate here. And then the third prong is we have an opportunity for organizations to sign on to a petition, essentially, that would voice their opposition to the petition. So the, excuse me, the sign-on letter for organizations, I'm happy to send it around. I have no idea what your process is, but if you want to sign on to it, we welcome you. I will actually post a link to the Google form. It has the actual language of the letter, and then also a sign-on process. It's a Google form. Basically, you fill out the organization, and then the organization signs on. I'll note that the sign-on letter has a lot of emphasis on environmental and equity issues, so low-income customers, environmental justice customers. That's intentional. We wanted to make sure that people that believe in these issues have an opportunity to voice their opposition to the petition at FERC. And we wanted to make sure that there's a strong equity argument against the petition, because once again, NERA makes the argument that net metering actually hurts low-income customers. So I think I'll stop there and we can dive into questions. I'm happy to go down any path, whatever you want to talk about. I'm happy to chat.
Can we, do you think, oh, I guess we do have to do hands like that, don't we? Okay, raise my. I would say we could see, except there's some people I can't see to see their.
Right, I can see the hands this way. So you raise your hand, Roz, you get to talk.
Well, now my hand is on my picture, so I actually can see that.
And now
So,
you raise your hand because you're going to talk.
Right. Okay, I'm going to lower it right now. So Nathan, could you give folks an idea what that would mean in terms of net metering? Like right now, the ratio is we put energy for every 1 kilowatt hour we put in, we get that back. It's 1-to-1. The ratio is the same. Could you tell us what would happen if FERC in fact took over jurisdiction from the states?
Sure. I will note on an individual customer basis, it's really, really hard to say exactly how much this would hurt you. The reason it's so hard is because it depends on when you are actually using electricity. So I'll try to stay away from the technical terms, but the times of day that you use electricity and how well they align or don't align with the electricity you're generating from your solar system will determine essentially how much value you will lose as a result, or potentially lose as a result of this petition. So with that huge asterisk, we're talking in the range of $100 to $500 per year. And so over the life of your solar project, it's thousands of dollars.
Okay, was that, so let me just finish. I'm still on that one question, if you don't mind. What we had read was that it was a similar situation to what happened in Nevada, which we will show later, but when the retail became, for the energy that was generated, instead of getting paid retail, they started getting paid wholesale, which here in Black's Hills territory is a difference of approximately 12 cents retail down to 3 cents wholesale. So that would be a huge, assuming I didn't change any other behavior, that would have to not be a good thing for me. Do you know,
That's exactly right. And that's how you get to those hundreds of dollars over the life of the system, thousands of dollars of impact. It's that difference between the wholesale rate of 3 cents and the retail rate of 12 cents. So that 9 cent loss between the value of anything you export to the grid really starts to accumulate pretty quickly.
Anybody else has a question that wants to raise their hand, please?
Ken has a question, Manny. I can see his hand up.
Go ahead, Ken.
I think we only have 16 users, so you can see everybody in the same screen.
The problem is some people, I can't see their picture though. Will I still see I won't see their hand.
Well, okay. Well, there you might need it. So one of the things that was being explored in Colorado, and I think this is probably true about every electric utility in the country, but we have a specific legislation in the state looking at EV usage, right? So they're trying to gear up for more EVs, and they're talking about time of use, right? Now you may already experience that in Vermont. I think a lot of states do. We don't in our current utility, but Black Hills here is talking about they're calling it time of day, and their proposal was to take any power that was produced, and it depends on the season. There's two rates, one for summer and one for the rest of the year. Anyway, the summer rate, which goes from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., was going to triple the cost of electrical energy, more than triple the base rate. So I think that could even have bigger impact, I guess is my point. At time of use, does your estimate take that into account, time of use?
It does not. And the reason is that we didn't go through and try to estimate all of the different rate designs across the country. This was a pretty simple analysis overall. Now, you're absolutely right. If you're on a time of use rate, that could have very big impacts on your potential electric bill. I will note, though, that one of the big differences here is that you can actually adjust and change your behavior for time of use rates. You can account for that because you'll know exactly when that peak period starts. You said 3 o'clock and then it ends at 7 o'clock. So you know, for instance, I don't want to run my dishwasher. I don't want to run my washing machine or my clothes dryer during these hours, just as examples. So you can actually change your behavior and shift your load to the off-peak periods. And that's the whole point of time use rates. They actually can be very, very powerful in that regard to try to get people to use electricity during other times of the day.
And I think that was the whole intention, right? Is to change people's behavior, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So this isn't related to the NERA petition, but I will just note that most of the time, and I don't know specifically for Black Hills, but most of the time utilities pay upwards of like 50, 60, sometimes 80% of their total cost of the system for the very biggest peaks. So if you think of the hottest day when everyone's running their air conditioner, and that overall load is very, very high then. And the utilities have to build their system in order to meet that maximum amount of usage at one time. And if you can actually change the way people are charged for electricity rate design so that it lowers those peaks, it actually can lower the cost of the overall electricity system and therefore lower the cost of electricity overall. So it's actually really important that rate design is one of the things that's being discussed. Now, the big difference between that and the NERA petition is it's not easy. It's actually very, very difficult to monitor how much you're using in electricity and try to match that with how much you're generating for electricity. So that's not something you can easily plan for. There is a way to get around that if you want to install a battery. If you want to install electric storage, then you can start to account for that differently. But there's a lot of people that don't have storage right now, and they would be extremely impacted by the NERA petition.
I would say most people, probably net meter people, don't have storage. I mean, that's I think that's would be almost all the people in Pueblo. I mean, because the storage topic is a big topic, but battery storage is so expensive right now. And we've actually REOCA, we made the statement that let the utility be our battery. But I mean, if this really does happen, that may change the economics of batteries.
There is now currently a way to monitor both production and consumption with an app called Edge. And it requires that your solar installer come in and install some CTs on your net meter, but it will actually give you, and it can actually, it's a very smart app. It can actually detect devices that are being turned on, and actually sometimes can actually identify that it is the microwave or it is a refrigerator. Sometimes it doesn't know what the device is. It calls it device one and so forth, but it is quite a smart app. I recommend everybody to look into the Edge app now.
Edge or Sense?
Is that something that, excuse me, is that something that would work on a sun power system with their microinverter? Or is it expecting the Edge inverter?
No, it's not the Edge inverter. It's like a collar or some CTs that they just install on the bidirectional meter side, and those CTs that can then read your consumption and can also read your production, and it shows up in the app. Yes, Ross?
Do other people have questions? Though I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to take up all the time of my questions. So I would.
Whoever has a question, please raise their hand.
Hey, raise your hand.
Everybody got shy.
Paul Huber, you want to say something, Paul?
I was just going to mention eGauge also has the capability to monitor production and consumption on individual circuits.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Heather, would you like to say something?
And I saw Charles had his hand, literally had his hand up over there.
Okay.
Okay. How much time do we have to work on this?
Oh, good question. I should have mentioned that. Sorry. The deadline for submitting any comments was extended to June 15th. If you want to use, for instance, savesolar.org, we'll probably cut off letters a couple days in advance of that, just so we have time to actually compile them all together and then submit them to FERC.
Okay, you said 16th or 13th?
15th.
Oh. Okay, 15th.
And
I have
think,
one question.
Oh, go ahead.
Where's the?
Charles had a question. Charles, at the bottom left, you can turn off your mute. Can he, Manny? Can he turn off his own?
I'll unmute him. Go ahead, Charles Pauls.
It's still muted, I can see.
I don't know where you had me.
Okay, you're on.
You're on.
Hey, I have no question. I'm just listening. I don't know where the thing said that I.
Sorry, John. I saw your hand up.
Sorry. No, I'm just listening.
Manny, I had a question.
Go ahead.
So what's the governor's office position on this? And does the governor's office currently have any kind of, or do they have any renewable energy office left in the governor with the new governor?
I understand that he is very gung-ho on the electrification of transportation. That's his big initiative. And there are resources. But as far as distributed generation and all that, I don't see much happening there.
I mean, we're hoping, Paul, as you can see, I don't think Nathan said it, but the fact that these people decide to do this now is a little suspicious. And during a pandemic, the governor's probably his first concern isn't net metering, right? So we're hoping to guide him in this direction. And after today, we do have on our mailing list Danae Escar. We've contacted her, and Leroy. We haven't contacted the governor directly because that's what we're all doing with this petition, I presume. But he does know us, Nathan. Should we send him a separate letter outside of your framework as well, or why not?
Sure.
Whatever.
Yeah. If you know state officials, I would reach out to them and see A, if they're aware of what's happening, and then B, if they have the time, the bandwidth to actually participate. So I'll note from Colorado, the Energy Office has intervened. And I know that the chair of the PUC is working through NARUC on this issue. NARUC is the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. So it's the national organization for public utility commissioners.
What
So
about
I know
COSIA?
that. Pardon me, what was that?
Oh, I was just asking, excuse me, what about COSIA?
I don't know what COSIA has done on this front. I'm not sure. I know that National SIA has. They're working on.
Advocate, I would think.
I did contact Mike Kruger, Paul from COSIA, and he said that the national organization was taking care of it and his plate was filled with other things. So he was happy to let them handle it. But that was one of my questions to you, Nathan, was what are they doing? They are our national organization. Are they diving in and really helping out on this, SIA?
So I'm going to try to answer this a little delicately. National SIA has focused on writing comments. They're writing their own comments that they'll be submitting individually as SIA. And that is pretty much the extent of SIA's work on this. SIA is not really doing much. They're doing very, very little, actually, as far as outreach to whether it's states or other entities in order to mobilize to fight this.
I have another question, which I'm not exactly quite clear on. It's a jurisdictional question. I understand that customers of investor-owned utilities are overseen by, or let's say by the Public Utilities Commission of the state. But the rural communities, for example, Isabel Electric, they are a co-op, and I understand they are not overseen by the Public Utilities Commission in Colorado, but I don't know who has jurisdictional decisions over them, if it's FERC directly or not.
It's a good question. And every state's a little bit different on that front. So I'm not going to say I know Colorado specifically well, but the way it works for the co-ops in general, the co-ops and also the municipal electric utilities also, is that essentially they self-regulate. So there's normally some type of board that oversees their operations. And the general idea is that since the co-ops and the muni electrical utilities, they don't have a profit motivation. They're not doing it to make money. Since they don't have that, they don't need the same type of regulation that you would see out of an investor-owned utility. So the co-ops and munis kind of self-regulate. Nonetheless, they still fall under state jurisdiction. And that's important to kind of note specifically in regard to this petition, because they are implicated by the petition. They would be impacted by the petition too.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, Ross?
Does anybody mind if no, it's okay, okay. I spoke to our rural our co-op here, Nathan, so I could understand this situation a little better because I never really quite understood how they operate. With Black Hills, as you know, you can roll over month to month, and at the end of the calendar year, December 31st, you can decide whether you want to check for your excess, or as we recommend, rolling over your excess. Since you're rolling over at retail, and when they're paying you that check in wholesale, it didn't take us but 1 year to see that that wasn't working out too well. So we rolled over. But I didn't know how San Isabel actually did it. And I talked to their energy manager there. And their month, they roll over month to month as we do. But the big difference is at the end of May, they cash them out. And when I asked him, well, what do they cash them out at? He told me they cash them out at avoided cost, which in a second I'm going to want you to define for us. And that avoided cost was 7.5 cents. So it's not wholesale and it's not retail. It's somewhere in between. And I'm sure they pay the one-to-one otherwise, because that's the general accepted procedure in our state. But if FERC came in and did otherwise, they would probably be inclined to go along. I don't know. But what is avoided cost? Because I've read that several places that that's what at least they're asking for. These investor-owned utilities. Okay. Nathan?
I always thought avoided cost was wholesale.
So they actually are the same, but they're different from utility to utility. So the idea between avoided cost is that this goes back to the Public Utility Regulatory Policy Act from the 70s. The idea is that the utility should have to pay somebody that's generating electricity the cost it otherwise would have incurred, the cost that the utility otherwise would have incurred to generate that same electricity. The idea being is the utility and then ratepayers have they're not financially harmed at all. The costs are the same if somebody else generates electricity or if the utility generates electricity. Now, that being said, that's the general idea behind avoided costs, and it's required as a result of PURPA that all utilities develop an avoided cost. But that being said, there are vastly different ways to calculate avoided costs, not only around the country, but also within a state. And you're seeing that here with Black Hills, and then I didn't catch the co-op's name, but.
San Isabel. That's interesting. So it's not, so Paul, you said you thought that that was the wholesale. That's interesting. I guess we need to do more research. It's such a.
Yeah, that's what I've always understood, but I was surprised to hear that he said 7.5% because I thought it was.
No, cents, 7.5 cents.
I mean, 7.5 cents because I thought it was like avoided cost was like 3 cents.
Well, that's right. Okay, yeah, the difference was.
So.
And Paul, and he did make the comment, Paul. Jack Snell did make the comment that not retail and not wholesale, something in between. So he.
Yeah. Yeah, I just got my check today.
Oh, really? How interesting. Did you compute it by chance?
No, I haven't done that yet.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I will note that avoided cost can include non-generation cost in some situations. So it could be that for this co-op, they're including some of the cost of generation and transmission into the avoided cost. But that is pure speculation on my part because I have not looked at all at how they calculate avoided costs.
Can you see Ken's hand, Manny? I don't.
Yes, I'm unmuting him as we speak. Go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say, so the co-op that we're talking about is San Isabel Electric Association, and they don't generate any of their own power. So they, so it's all bought. There's the generator is tri-state. and a lot of the Colorado co-ops use tri-state, not all of them, but and this tri-state uses a lot of coal generated power, so they're all trying to get away from it. Tri-state's trying to go to more renewables. So this evolution is happening also while we're talking. I had a question earlier, where you were talking about co-ops are kind of self-regulating. In the case of San Isabel, they have their own board, right? It's local control, right? I mean, we just tried to get our Black Hills utility to municipalize. We just went through election and lost, which is not an uncommon fate. But we scared the utility. They spent a ton of money to get away from us or to keep their franchise. That's not the point. You said everybody's ruled at the state level. Did you mean the FERC level? At the federal level, everybody has to account to the FERC, right?
Well,
I mean, they are regulated by the state too, but.
Yeah, it depends on what exactly you're talking about. So if you're talking about the way in which a utility, in this case a co-op or a muni, sets the price that people have to pay, the rate that people have to pay, ultimately that is regulated by the state.
Okay.
But if there's something else, so for instance, if you're talking about the way that a co-op buys electricity from another utility or another organization, that would actually be regulated by FERC ultimately. So it can get a little complicated here as far as who is the ultimate master on this stuff, but it really depends on the details of the situation.
So our co-op definitely would be affected by this ruling also. Then. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. Yes. There's no doubt about that. And I see in the chat function a question about basically what about those that have a buyback agreement from Black Hills? And this kind of gets to how will existing customers be treated if there's this change in the way that FERC views net metering and basically taking jurisdiction. And this is a super important question because essentially a state can't give legacy treatment to an existing customer if that is viewed as a violation of law. So if FERC asserts jurisdiction and says that we have jurisdiction over any exports and those exports must be at avoided cost, the states cannot give legacy treatment to systems that are already online. So this would essentially preempt any policies that the customers are already experiencing, including contracts.
By contract, you mean the production-based incentive contracts?
I don't know that, yes? Nathan, I'm not sure that's even a term that's, like Black Hills has given or did have a incentive program, production-based incentive, that they are still running a little differently than when we were involved. But is that something that you're, I don't know how that would, I don't think that would affect it really.
He just said it would, Russ. I mean.
Oh, with the production-based incentive? Okay.
So, I mean, the FERC would overrule it if it did, right?
Okay, okay, really? Okay. So that's the 10-year agreement you're talking about, John?
Let me unmute John. No, hold on a second. Let me see who John is.
Did John drop off?
Oh, he may have dropped off. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'll ask him about that. I don't know if that's because that's what they had told us too, but I thought that was sort of a general.
So I think this FERC thing, obviously is bad for everybody, right? So we want to fight it as much as possible, and that's kind of one of the reasons REOCA is here, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so it feels like deja vu all over again, as they say. why we got started. Actually, this is even worse than when we first coalesced REOCA. So Nathan, we have like 10 minutes. What we're doing it now. We're putting it out there to have people sign your petitions. You know, we've sent the Vote Solar petition around. Should we talk about your seminar on Thursday? Or what other things can we do as a group? You mentioned.
Let me share that because we have a limited time, and I don't know if you want to still show the
Manny,
clip
I
at
can
the
send that
bottom.
to everybody. I can send that to everybody. I
Okay.
don't want to take time doing that.
Okay.
I'd rather hear from Nathan what we as a group can do that we're, you know, you mentioned as a individual, but then there was a group thing as like REOCA, of course, but as individuals in REOCA, do you have another form for us to do, or?
So individuals can use the Safe Solar website, but if REOCA wants to sign on to the letter that I included, that I sent around in the chat function, then REOCA could do that. The sign-on letter is for organizations rather than individuals. So there's two options depending if you want to, as an individual, you want to do something, or as an organization, REOCA wants to do something.
So it would just be the board that would sign that? Is that what you're saying?
I have no idea how your process works.
Okay, all right. I'll take a look at it. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this form that Nathan put the link to.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Like you said, it's a Google form. So
Okay,
it's pretty
great.
straightforward. I would say that REOCA, we need to do this. We need to sign on to this petition. We need to do as much as we possibly can to help.
That's what we're trying to do, you know. So
Let me say this. I think everybody who has participated, you are all dues-paying members. We all need to make an effort to recruit our friends and families that are not yet dues-paying members of REOCA. We need to generate some income. So please help us recruit some new members into REOCA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, Diane and I, we're married. We live in the same house. Should we both submit this petition? Does that help?
Oh, yes, definitely. You both
Absolutely,
sign,
every
yes,
person.
as individuals for
Ross
sure.
and I already submitted each one of us an individual petition.
So one thing I'll note when it comes to talking points or like how to think about this, it's important to realize that this isn't a partisan issue. So it's not a red or a blue state issue or anything like that. Red states and blue states, or Republicans and Democrats, however you want to think about it, we should all be mad about this. This is really an equal opportunity offensive measure here. It impacts all of us. So first, that I think if FERC ends up viewing this as a partisan issue, meaning if they end up getting a lot of attention that is viewing this as a partisan issue, that could actually really be bad for all of us. We don't want FERC to just retreat to their partisan corner, if you will. The second thing is, if you need an enemy, somebody to be angry at NERA. So FERC doesn't actually control who submits petitions to them. So it's not as if FERC said to NERA, go ahead, please submit this petition to us. We would like you to do this. NERA just submitted the petition, and now it's up to FERC to decide how to react. So don't be angry at FERC right now, at least. Just make sure there's a lot of attention on this issue so that FERC knows a lot of people are paying attention.
There's one last question from Heather. She's asking whether contacting the Attorney General in Colorado would be of any help.
Absolutely. So the attorneys general across the country should be involved in this proceeding. AGs inherently are responsible for protecting states, so they have to defend the states when there's any type of lawsuit, as an example. But they also should be protecting states in these regulatory arenas. And we've seen across the country a lot of attorneys general actually get involved and intervene in this petition. I haven't actually gone through and counted recently, but it's definitely over 10. And the Colorado AG has not intervened yet. So please, if you have any contacts at the AG's office, please reach out.
Does anyone know the AG's office? I mean, not that you have to, but okay.
Yeah, I do. It's Phil Weiser.
Well, I mean, do you know him though at all? Would he know you?
No, I don't know
Oh,
personally.
okay.
I thought you wanted to actually know who it was.
Oh, okay. No, it's okay.
I have two things
Thank
I
you.
wanted. Two things.
I tried to help out on his campaign. He might remember me. I wrote letters to the editor and stuff for him.
Would be great, Heather. We'll take Danae and Leroy. We'll do them again. I think we did them as a group, which was probably not a good idea, Manny. But I'm gonna do her and do them virtually tomorrow. Okay.
I believe Charles wanted to say something. Charles,
You got to unmute him, Manny.
I'm trying, honey.
Charles, at the bottom left, you should be able to unmute yourself.
I hate to wait this time.
There you are.
You got it. Okay.
Is there any way that we can find out who actually is behind this NERA thing? This inability to, and unmasking seems to be something that I'm seeing a lot in politics right now. That we can't unmask who these people are and know immediately what their agenda is. Without it, it's so nebulous. The other thing I wanted to also ask is whether any of us who would normally pay our dues in October would consider doing it now. I just did it yesterday. Pay your dues ahead so we got some more bucks. That's it.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles. I do appreciate that. It's a volunteer organization, but there are a lot. I know I'm preaching the choir here. Everybody is paying dues, but I am planning on sending a letter out because this stuff takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And who knows, it may, we have insurance, we have directors and officers insurance to protect the board. So there's a lot of expenses that we may incur even more. I don't know how much intervener status costs, but lawyers, we probably have enough in our dues for about 5 hours of lawyering, I would think. So.
I found a form on the Colorado State AG site that you can send him a complaint or inquiry. So I put the link to everybody.
In the chat. Thanks.
That would be great for everyone to do, and then Heather, maybe a personal one from you would be great. I think, huh? I think as many as we can.
Sure.
Maybe we ought to go to the mayor and the city council with this issue too.
Definitely.
Good idea.
Also in the chat function, I included a link to the Energy and Policy Institute, which is a watchdog organization. And they've compiled basically all of the publicly available information on NERA. Spoiler alert, it's not that much. So there's a lot of information in there, but there's still a lot we do not know about NERA. I do not think it's inaccurate to call them, or specifically, I think it's accurate to call them a shadowy organization.
Can I have a question for you, being technical? All these links that Nathan gave us in the chat, after the meeting, will they remain there in some way?
I am saving them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Does anyone else have any other questions for Nathan? Do we have a really cool clip from Years of Living Dangerously, if you would like to see it. I don't want to keep people, I said 7 o'clock, but if there's no more questions, it would, again, we're preaching to the choir, but it's really impacting to see when exactly the situation happened in another state overnight, the solar business. Paul, you can confirm this. something like this could ruin the solar business overnight, and that's what happened in Nevada. But the good news is people like us made so much noise, seriously, that 2 years later, 2015 is when this happened. In 2017, Governor Sandoval actually reversed his decision. So that said, we do have power, but we need numbers. That's our most important thing. So you guys want to take 5 minutes and watch this clip?
Sure.
Manny,
I'm going to drop off everyone, but it's
Nathan,
great to see all of you and talk.
I can't thank you enough. And I will send tomorrow, we'll send a link to, there's going to be a webinar on Thursday. Nathan, why don't you just give it a quick pitch?
Oh, sure. It's basically a webinar to talk through some of the issues we talked about today, except for we'll have, for instance, somebody from the Energy and Policy Institute to talk about NERA specifically. So it's an opportunity to basically just learn a little bit more, figure out how to engage. A lot of the information will be pretty similar today to what we covered today, but there will be different people, so there will be slightly different opinions and perspectives.
And that's at 1 o'clock our time. That's 3 o'clock Eastern time, 1 o'clock Mountain time, I believe. Is that correct, Nathan?
That sounds right.
It sounds right. It's right. It's right. Don't worry.
Have you sent that meeting link out, Roz? Is that part of the?
I don't believe that we did. I don't believe we did, but we certainly will after this meeting. I'll get it right out.
Thank you so much, Nathan.
Nathan, thank you. Really, this is the one thing about Zoom I love, and we really appreciate you zooming in with us for this meeting. It was really very useful, and thank you. And we're on it. We're going to do our best to get as many people as we can signing that petition.
And if we need to reach out to you, please please be aware that we may still need help, Nathan. So thank you anyway, and let's now watch the movie if you guys still want to see this.
It's fine. It's like a 4-minute clip.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Nathan.
Bye.
Good luck Thursday.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ken. That came from Solar United Neighbors. Their thing, and I thought that they sent it to everybody. So I will send that out. So Manny, are you sharing that?
Yeah, I'm trying. Hold on.
Okay, that's okay. It's okay.
Let me go to my screen here.
Oh yes, those were the good old days. Okay, good. Very good.
I'm trying to make it big.
I know. It's okay.
There we go.
Okay, great. I'm gonna move you guys out of the way. Okay, wait. Go back, Manny, because you're.
It's just.
It's obviously not working well. I
Not
just tell
working.
them to watch Sit at Home.
So
Okay.
what happened with solar in Nevada? How does this end up an empty office?
This fight is about competition. Form of competition that utilities have ever faced. And so the utility strategy is to quietly go to the legislators and get them to kill solar under the cover of darkness.
Well, how do you know all of that?
I actually used to work in a progressive forward-thinking utility that was actually trying to develop solar. And then they got bought by an even bigger utility. It became the largest utility in the country. And my new bosses came to me one day and said, listen, I know you think your job was to promote renewables. Your new job is to eliminate all renewables at all costs, and specifically rooftop solar.
That's crazy. what were some of the tactics, the steps?
Well, specifically, the idea was that all of our team of lobbyists would go and fan across the country and lobby against renewable energy policies, specifically rooftop solar policies.
That's correct. We were both there when Excellent hired us. What stood out to me was just the scale, how they would hire tons of lobbyists to lock solar out of entire states.
Oftentimes a utility will hire a number of lobbyists to do a very, very small amount of work. And what that means is that it becomes difficult for a renewable energy company to find a lobbyist who isn't already conflicted out, and that hamstrings the industry.
So how big of a setback is this to the solar movement in Nevada and in the country?
Well, this is a huge setback because it provides a blueprint for the opponents, the utilities. Okay, we rolled it back in Nevada, we can go around and roll it back in other states, which of course puts the solar industry on its back heels because these are young companies, and to spend their resources fighting these utilities is a drain on them. But if you can put solar on the roof of your house, make your own electricity cheaper than you could buy from the grid, what informed American homeowner is not going to do that? It is the game changer, and that's why it's such a threat to the powers that be.
Hey, Commissioner, you claim that you have not seen any evidence of hardship or job loss. Well, the truth is, I am the evidence. We are the evidence.
Well, it wasn't as impacting because the quality isn't as good, but I don't even know if he said in the beginning.
I'll show you how to take this old dresser drawer.
Okay, let's stop that.
Turn it into a garden. There is no end to the bounty of Mother Nature. There's enough for everybody. And that's one thing that you will learn from gardening. Most importantly, what I'm going to teach you is how to grow your own food. Legendary.
Alrighty then. Oh, some technical difficulty.
From planting
Anyway.
to harvesting. Mint, lettuce,
come on.
sweet potatoes, rosemary, kale.
So, what happened in Nevada, folks, could happen here. And we're not going to let that happen because we're on it. We found out about this whole thing the day that the May 14th when the when the first deadline was over. So fortunately, there's an extension. So let's get those cards and letters going, folks. And thank you all for coming very much. We really appreciate it. Not bad for not having to drive someplace, I'd say. And this way we can get experts from all over the world to these meetings. It just occurred. We asked him on Friday. It's so easy. No plane, no train, no car, just a Zoom. That's all you need. Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Roz. Thanks, Manny.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. We're ending the Zoom now.
Hey, Mark.